Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this wonderful workshop by Media and Entertainment Skills Council. This is Pooja Arora, and today we are talking about visual storytelling in comics. Now, storytelling, I've always heard it's about telling stories, but visual storytelling is something new for me also to learn about. And this workshop is being organized in association with Indian Comic Association. And I'm glad to introduce Mr. Ajitesh Sharma today. Apart from having a postgraduate program at ISB, Ajitesh Sharma ji holds a post graduation in technology and worked as an aerospace scientist at ISRO, after which he started his entrepreneurial journey in diverse fields. I'm just still imagining how ISRO and how comics. And he is an internationally acclaimed fire auditor and has consulted multiple multinational clients. He has served many international film festivals and events as a curator, committee member, and jury. Over the years, he has shot internationally acclaimed films across the globe, fetching more than 350 international official selections and awards at various international events in more than 55 countries. He's an acclaimed fashion photographer too, and his photos have been showcased at multiple events of repute. He's also an internationally accredited life and business coach and an accomplished game designer, having made an award winning board game, which is a combination of Ludo and chess. He's the brain behind an Indian comics publishing house, Cinemix. And as I was telling you, he is also the founding president of Indian Comics Association. I think if I'll keep talking about Ajitesh ji, I'll have to go for another 30 minutes to introduce him. So let's quickly welcome him. Ajitesh, sir, so good to have you and your profile and the kind of experience you have. It's really worth appreciating.
Thank you, Poojaji, for wonderful introduction. And yeah, it's nice to have this session because it's always good to tell young students about the various fields they can go in or various ways they can go for. So thank you
Right.
for giving this opportunity.
And you are a real example of how a scientist working at ISRO turns to, Indian Comic Association president, and how from science to comics and so many diverse fields that you have seen, and how you are going to introduce that in your comics. We are really excited for that. So to begin with, I am handing over the session to Ajitesh ji to tell us more about visual storytelling, and let's learn from the back end. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, Pankaj, I'm sharing my screen. Just a minute. Yeah. So you can see my screen and I'm
Yes, it's visible.
okay. Okay. So yeah, today we are talking about visual storytelling through different mediums, but we will concentrate on comics because that's what we are focusing on today. In this session, what we'll learn about storytelling. We will learn how to tell a story, which is very important, whether it is visual storytelling, whether it is comics, whether it is films, games, any medium. How to tell a story, it is very important. And I will urge everyone, especially the young minds, to understand that what are the nitty-gritties of a good story and how to weave over. Then we'll talk about topic of the day, visual storytelling. What is digital storytelling? What is the difference between comics and graphic novels? Because that's a question which repeatedly comes in many of the forums. So I thought it is good to answer it this in this presentation. Understanding comics. What are the main elements of comics? What is the present scenario of comics in India? What are the opportunities for young student and young professional who want to make a career in this field? And what are the future trends which we should all look up to so that we can have a insight or a mindset whether we want to opt a career in this field or what we can do in the fields of visual storytelling. So this is pretty much the session plan. Every one of us know a story, कहानी हिंदी में अगर बोले तो कहानी. Every one of us know what a story is. But some words are so simple, they are so means daily routine words that we take their meaning for granted. हमें मालूम है कहानी क्या है, story क्या है. So we take it for granted. Okay, this is the story means kahani. It is a sequence of events. But when we dig deeper and we go into the insights of anything, then we see some new things emerging. So let's see how you will define a story. And you will see that when you go into definition, you will learn many things. And in the presentation, look out for the left bottom corners. Here I have marked everyone as a story. So there is some trivia and interesting facts on the left bottom corner of the screen on most of the slides. And we'll go for the, I will explain that, but you can have a watch on the left bottom corner. So we were talking about how you will define a story. एक कहानी को कैसे आप define करोगे? And the best thing we can do is to go for a dictionary definition. If we go with dictionary definition of a story, it is a description, either true or imagined, of connected series of events. A description of events and people that the writer or speaker has invented in order to entertain people. It's a narrative, either true or fictitious, in prose or verse, designed to interest, amuse, or instruct the hearer or reader. So I've just read out three different definitions of story from different dictionaries. But if you see the keywords, either true or imagined, which means a story can be a real life story or a fictitious story of a connected series of events. It's telling about the events which are connected. Definitely, it is a obvious thing that if somebody is narrating a story, it has to tell about the events which are connected. Then, in the second definition, just focus on this first. Speaker as invented in order to entertain people. This means we can invent stories. We can create stories. As we have mentioned that it is either true or fictitious, so we can create stories. And in the third definition, it goes into more details. It say true or fictitious in prose or verse. So it can be a poem, it can be a narrative, but it's a story. So when we go into this definition, we got the nitty gritties of what a story is. Amuse or instruct the hearer or reader. So a story can be oral or written, but it is being designed by the speaker or writer to entertain the audience or to educate the audience or reader. So, as I said, that on the left bottom of the screen, we can see a trivia tale. A tale is a specific kind of story which is not true, which is a fictitious story, and it often ends with high morals. So, we have seen like different folk tales and other. This is tale. It is different from a story in a sense that it is mostly fictitious. Tale is not based on real events. So since when these stories are in existence? These stories are in existence since time immortal. All the cultures of the world have seen or witnessed stories one way or the other. If we discuss about the Chauvet caves of France, there are rock paintings found in France, Chauvet caves, which are more than 36,000 years old, or maybe even before that. That's kind of a story, visual story. Then we have the most incredible Indian story ever told, which is Mahabharata by Maharishi Vedvyas. And if you see the trivia, Vyas means Kathavachak. Kathavachak is the storyteller, narrator in Hindi. So all these things are connected. Even if we talk about other cultures, there are people called shamans. And shamans were people who were like a magician, like doctors for the local people. They used to treat people through telling stories. Even if we go back to the first slide, this is a shaman. This is an old Lady Shaman telling the stories to young children. So the storytelling exists in different cultures since time immortal. This is no written or oral record of since when the stories have been formed or told. It can be in a form of songs, poems, prayers, proverbs, lullabies, lori जिसको बोलते हैं हिंदी में, fables, as we discussed, tales, story. Different kind of story exist in different cultures in different forms. One more interesting thing I can tell you, fables is a story which is mainly from the animal point of view. So in fables, animals speak. So it is a particular specific kind of story in which animals speak. That's called fables. What is the purpose of a story? So we now know what a story is. We know the definition. We understand that it is in existence from uh, so many years. But what is the purpose? क्या क्या कहना चाहती है कहानी हमसे? What is the purpose of the story? It could be for sharing experience. A storyteller can share his or her experience through a story. And when what we call this kind of story, biographies. It can be for making connections, a business meeting, a seminar, a family function. So it could be for making connection. And when we narrate those kind of story, what they are called anecdotes. हमारे इंडियन कल्चर में दादा नाना के यहाँ बहुत सारी कहानियां सुनाते थे और उसमें से कई कहानियां उनकी खुद की होती थी, उनके बचपन की होती थी. दोज आर एनेक्डोट्स. दोज आर फॉर मेकिंग कनेक्शन, मेकिंग रिलेशंस. देन स्टोरीज आर ऑल्सो फॉर पासिंग नॉलेज. These are what are these called? Text, our textbooks. So those are for passing knowledge. That's a different kind of storytelling. Then storytelling is for evoking emotions through prose or verse. What are the oldest story or ever told? These are the epics of Ramayana from India and Gilgamesh from Sumerian mythology, which is now Iraq. So I'm concentrating more on storytelling. We'll come to visual storytelling in some time, but I'm concentrating more on storytelling because if you are a good storyteller, you understand that what a story is, what is the purpose of story, how story came into existence, how we can form a story, and what objectives our story can meet. Then you can use that knowledge for any medium, be it visual, be it audio, be it kinesthetic. You can use it for any medium. So that's why concentrating on storytelling is important. And then we'll gradually come to visual storytelling. Let's talk about the power of storytelling. Published in 1888, almost 150 years from now, Chandrakanta. Many of people might have heard or seen the serial or read the story. Chandrakanta is regarded as one of the first Indian fantasy novels. Novel means a book which is published, it's 200, 300 pages long, and it is long story, and it is published as a book, not as a chapter, not as a sequence. That is called novel. So Chandrakanta is regarded as one of the first Indian fantasy novel. It was written by Babu Devkinandan Khatri, who born in Patna, Bihar, and moved on later to Varanasi to establish his press. And you know what this uh, novel was able to achieve? It achieved something which was almost impossible. Believe it or not, it compelled millions of people to learn Hindi. That time in India, Urdu was the prominent language, and most of the literature was available in Urdu, or even some literature was available in English. But this was written in Hindi, and it was so magical, so mystical that people want to read it on any cost, and they were ready to learn Hindi in order to read the story. And this is the first book which was able to achieve something like this. Due to the subject matter, since it is fantasy, it is not based on real thing, and it is not. It talks about magic. It talk about talisman. Chandrakanta has not found a high place in Indian literature, but it has done something which even highest order of other literatures have not been able to achieve. So we have heard about different authors, different poet, different writers in our Hindi in our schools, but we have not heard about this magical gem, Chandrakanta, because unfortunately it is not what to say. It is not classified in a literature. But if a book is able to induce a habit of reading in millions of people, then it deserves something special. And that's the power of storytelling. And you know what? When Devkinandan Khatri wrote this Chandrakanta, he was just 26 years old. And it was very unfortunate that he died at the young age of 53. Otherwise, he would have given us many more novels. And I urge the young students to read Chandrakanta. This is my favorite read of all time, and I've read it multiple times, numerous times. So this is one takeaway I want all of you to take from this session. What are the types of storytelling? There can be oral storytelling. We discussed that there were shamans and there were gurukuls, and where Panchtantra is an example where Pandit Vishnu Sharma taught many stories to the four sons of the king. That is the example of oral storytelling. Then there is performing art, which we all know by the name of theater. So then there is performing art. We can tell our stories through theater. It's kind of storytelling. Then there is written text. It illustrative text means with drawings. Then there are movies. Anything which, when the sequence of images is moving, it could be animation, it could be live action film, anything with when the images are moving, it's called movies. So all those categories are included in this, and that movies and interactive mediums like websites, like AR, XR, and video games. All those are interactive. So we can classify storytelling in this six uh, sections: oral, performing art, written text, illustrative text, movies, and interactive. Our focus of the session is on illustrative text, and I will come to that. But that's how we can classify the stories. But at the heart, we are classifying this storytelling into different formats, different mediums. But at the heart of storytelling, or at the heart of every medium, is the line story is king. This is the motto of a company which won 23 Oscars, Pixar. If you see the bottom left of the slide. So a company which has won 23 Oscars, and that is the motto of that company. Story is king. So that shows us the importance of storytelling. That shows us the importance, as I was telling you earlier, that animation, live action, visual storytelling, medium can be anything, but at the heart, at the core of it is a story. That's what Pixar, the the if you include the nominations, Pixar has won 23 Oscar, and there are 47 other nominations. So 70 nominations and wins. The core, the heart, the ideology of that studio is story is king. So that can, again and again, we can reinforce the same thing, that story is okay. So we are talking about this oral, performing art, written text, illustrative text, movies, interactive. And when we talk about written text, all of these six sections can be classified into subsections. For an example, and I will quickly go through it. I am taking this, that literature can be classified into prose, poetry. Prose can be further classified into fiction, non-fiction. Poetry is narrative. Narrative is what normal poems we hear. Those are called narratives. Then there are lyrics, which are the film songs and other songs which we hear. Then there is dramatic, which theater, I spoke about that. So those are poetry. Then prose, we have fiction and non-fiction. History, news, biography, diary, anecdotes. We discuss anecdotes, essays, all those are non-fiction. And there are fiction like novel, short story, fables, parables, legends, epics. All those are fictions. But don't worry if you are not able to, it's not about the details of all those formats. Once once you make your career in one of these fields, or once you go more deep, then you will automatically understand the nitty-gritties of each one of this. But but if you have to remember one basic thing, then it can be that prose is something which is done in ordinary language, and it's simple text. So we are writing a story. It is in our day-to-day ordinary language in simple text, not a calculated or what to say, designed text, but a verse which is poetry. It is more in a formal language, a metered language, and it can have imaginative or with. So simply we can distinguish between prose and poetry through simple language and simple text, and imaginative language and rhythmic text. So those are the basic difference. What as a story? This is important slide. Focus on this for some time. This is important. What do you need as a storyteller? What you need? Because if you are seeing this session, you are investing an hour of your time. So by the end of this session, you should at least know how to create a story. That would be a nice takeaway from this session. And for that, this slide is important. First, you need a topic. Topic could be anything, but you need a topic. Then you decide the genre, that in which kind of genre you want to write the story. Then you have to set the context, whether it's a story set in modern times or ancient times. Then you have to have the characters. Who are the protagonists, antagonists of your story, or likewise. And then the plot. Plot is the plot is the step where you will invest maximum time. So let's do this quick exercise. Suppose a topic is about helping a stranger. Genre is drama. In context, it is set in World War times. In characters, we are talking about a protagonist who is a lady pilot. So plot could be a lady pilot saves an enemy soldier during Second World War and faces the ultimate consequences. This could be your plot line. And now you can further develop. You can make scenes, you can make dialogues, you can add dialogues, you can add characters, you can add secondary, tertiary characters, you can add antagonists, and so on. And write your whole story. So this is a like a formula to write a story. For some of the people, storytellings come very naturally, but for others, they can practice this. Let's try one more. So if the topic is about saving the town, and you want to have this in a action genre, in context is apocalyptic times when Earth is finished and uh, the dystopian time is going on, then and your main protagonist is a retired boxer, then a plot could be a retired boxer takes on the hordes of zombie students to save his dystopian town. So there are two more, and you can try yourself later at what else you can come up with. Solving a mystery in a thriller in a pre-independence area by a failed student. So we can have a plot like the son of a captive freedom fighter finds a hidden armory in the Stanton rebels. You know what? For making this slide, it took me just 5 minutes. 5 minutes to write four plots. So it can be done with ease once you practice this. Finalize your topic, finalize your genre, finalize your context, finalize your character, and then go for plot. And when I say finalize, you have to choose. But later you have the flexibility once you're developing the plot, you have a flexibility to amend, to make changes. Nothing is finalized. But to start with, when you're learning, this is a kind of an exercise through which you can develop stories. And frankly, for different writers, it is very difficult to say that what comes first as an inspiration, whether it is a topic, or a genre, or context, or characters, or plot. It is difficult to say that what comes as an inspiration first. I have written many stories for films, comics, and other things, and sometimes it is the character which appears to me first, or sometimes it is just the plot, or sometimes it is a topic. So you have to start somewhere. Whenever you are having an idea, you have to start somewhere, and then build other things around it. So that's about storytelling, how to tell the story. But for telling a story, you should know the elements. Next 3-4 slides are talking about the practical elements, practicalities of storytelling. We will talk about elements, we will talk about characters, we will talk about plots. So it's about first we will talk about elements of storytelling. When you are writing a story, you can write it in first person, second person, third person. First person point of view is when you yourself are in a story, or your protagonist is in a story and he is narrating his or her own story. So that's first person. Second person is very typical and very rarely used in the storytelling medium, but it is when you're telling a story through a conversation between two people. It could be a mother or daughter conversation. It could be a two conversation of two friends. When you're telling a story in that way, when that we are just seeing the conversation between two people, it is in second person. And third person, which is one of the most adopted form of storytelling, is when you are telling a story from universal point of view, and your protagonist, antagonist, everyone is a third person in the story. Then there can be genre mix. They could be, like we discussed in last slide, it could be drama, comedy, a specific genre, or it could be cross genre. Dark comedy, which is very famous in the OTT era. It could be a romantic drama. It could be a multi-genre thing, like a horror comedy, which is again very famous in recent times. Then we have to think about story style, whether it is a conversational story, whether what is the style of storytelling, whether it is narrative, satirical, commentary, poetic, visual, musical, kinesthetic. It could be different styles. I will not explain each of that in detail, but this is the style of, you can choose the plot, you can choose the topic, you can choose the genre. But then how you're telling the story, whether you're doing a satire, whether you are keeping the style of conversation normal, day-to-day talks, or you are keeping it very poetic, or you are leaving it more to visuals and just the minimum of text. So all those things you can adopt. Then what is the plot style? Whether plot is linear. Most of the storytellers, when they start, they go for linear plots. But if you see most of the good films, they go for non-linear plots with which have flashbacks. It could be episodic, or it could be parallel tracks going on, tracks going on parallelly. There are many films which we, especially period films, in which we see two different tracks running parallelly, like Rang De Basanti. There was one track set in pre-independence era, and there was one track set in modern times. Then there are medium of storytelling, which we have briefly discussed earlier. This could be when you are designing a story, you should know medium beforehand. That which is the medium in which this story will be told, or where they will be this people will be seeing this story. If it is it could be oral, as in stand up and theater. It could be visual, as in manga and comics. It could be written, or it could be digital. But don't worry and don't let this many things confuse you. If you can't remember anything, remember just two things: the characters and plot are two of the most important aspects of any story. And that's why we'll covering the characters and plot in next two slides. Characters, when you're writing a story, you have to define your characters. Characters could be protagonist, antagonist, romantic interest, confident, protagonist, and tertiary characters. Protagonist is hero, antagonist is villain, romantic interest is the love interest of hero or heroine. Confident is somebody who is supporting hero. Protagonist is somebody who is as important as protagonist. So we have a very special Hindi film, Sholay. So in Sholay, you cannot say that who is protagonist. It is Jay or Viru. So that is a film which has tetragonist, two protagonists. Then we have tertiary characters who are the supporting characters. Then we have archetypes. If we talk about archetypes. What is archetype? Archetype is the common trait. It is something which is defined by the collective consciousness of humankind. It is the particular trait of that person. So when you are writing a character, you have to define the archetype of that character, whether he is a hero, whether he or she is ally side or enemy side. And you know what? Archetype can be classified into n number of various methods. There are different people who have put forward different theories. Archetypes can be classified into 4, 5, 7, 8, 12, 14, 16. Different type of rules are there. If we go to the bottom left, we can see one of the famous theory which tell about 12 archetypes is hero, sage, ruler, jester, outlaw, innocent, lover, caregiver, everyman, magician, creator, explorer. What are these words? Don't worry. When you read this is the age of digital media. When you YouTube, when you Google, you can very easily find this. What are these archetypes? But when you learn in deep about these archetypes, a hero archetypes is very easy to understand. Someone who is hero. The sage archetype is someone who is giving knowledge to hero, either hero or antagonist. Ruler is someone who only has the vision to rule, who is the king, who is providing shelter to everyone. Jester is for comedy interest. Outlaw is someone who is rebellious. Innocent is like a child who is not done anything. Lover is again love interest. So those all those archetypes are there. And what these archetypes are doing, that they are restricting your storytelling to that number of archetypes based on the theory which you are taking. So it could be 4, 5, 7, 8, 12, 14, 16. You can read that theory, and you will be able to learn about different archetypes, and then you can develop the story. Then characters can will have different archetypes, and they will also have different personality. It could be a real world character which is talking in real world language, or it could be a complex character, psychological complex character. It could be a mythological personality where the character is speaking in language which is more suited to ancient times, or it could be a real life inspired character, or it could be totally different self developed world where character is talking or character is behaving in a totally different manner which is created by writer. So that's on developing characters. Coming to the plot, plot has two main aspects: type and structure. Again, if you read more in detail, plot can be classified as per different theories into 2, 3, 6, 7, 20, 36. There are various theories which classify plots in different types. And, and once you know that this is the limited number of plots which exist, then you can classify any story in this number of plots. Two of the most adopted theories are six type and seven types. And many people have already done this exercise. They have taken this 2000, 3000 films, and they've classified all the films in this six or seven types. So this exercise has already been done. And what this means for you, what is the knowledge from here? This means for you that if you know all the six or seven types, you can make n number of stories. Two types is very simple, that is simple or complex, but that is not giving any information to us. Three type is again not giving any information to us: happy ending, unhappy ending, and tragedy. So a film or comic can have happy ending, unhappy ending, or tragedy. Coming to six and seven types, let's discuss the six types. Here you will get a lot of information, and here you will be able to understand that how to classify a story. Rags to riches. Rags to riches is a story of somebody who has achieved a lot, and we have seen his rise. 12th fail is a recent example. So it is a story about rise. Then there is a tragedy. Shakespeare has written many tragedy, and it is only about the fall of the subject, the fall of the antagonist or fall of the protagonist. That's a tragedy. Then the next classification is man in a hole. And man in a hole is about a story when a protagonist is in under some deep problem, and then he or she rises. So we see what we see here is a structure of fall and a rise. That's a man in a hole structure. Then there is a Icarus. Icarus was a Greek fictional Greek character who got a lot of power from his father, but ultimately because of his pride, he falls. So Icarus kind of structure tells us about rise and fall. Then there is a Cinderella structure, which is a rise because Cinderella was a poor girl, and when she meet her fairy mother, she rises. Then there is a fall because her step mother and sisters are not allowing her to meet Prince. And then there is a rise again when Prince meets her again. Cinderella kind of stories are rise, fall, rise. This is another structure. And finally, the sixth structure is Oedipus structure. Oedipus was a Greek. You can read the story online, but in summary, it is Oedipus was born with a curse that he will kill his father and he will marry his mother. And he tried many things to avoid the fate, but ultimately he ended up doing this. And it tells about the fall of Oedipus, rise of Oedipus, and again fall of the Oedipus. So this is the sixth type of structure. And if you take any story in the world, it can be classified into these six types. Similarly, I will not go into the detail, but there are seven types of structure. The quest, Overcoming the monster, rags to riches, voyage in return, comedy, tragedy, and rebirth. This is another theory. But as a practice, if you want to learn and if you want to practice yourself, go for six type of structure and try to put different comics, different films you have seen in these six types, and you will learn a lot. What is the difference between type and structures? Type will answer what kind of story is that, whereas structure will answer how that story was formed or is formed. So it is important to know what type of plot and structures of plot. Here we are going a little bit technical. So, but I was worried when I was putting this slide because this is more technical than most of the other slides. But we will not go into details and we will quickly skip through it. But as like characters can be classified as a different theories, plot type can be classified with different theories. Similarly, structure can be classified as per various theories, 3, 5, 8, 12. And mind you, all these theories I am talking about are given by well-known scientists, psychologists, um, artists. I have not given name because this is a simple class and I don't want to confuse all of you. But I encourage everyone to read about this structures. Whoever is interested to read about this structure type and see that what these great people have done. These are as per various theories. So this there could be a three-act structure. We talk about setup, confrontation, and resolution. There is a pyramid structure. There is a 8-point arc. And there is a hero's journey. I will come to three-act and pyramid, but let me tell you one thing: the hero's journey is one of the most adopted template of plot which people use for writing their stories. I will encourage you more to see some YouTube videos and Google more about hero's journey, and you will see that something as complex as Ramayana you can easily classify it as per hero's journey. It will start from ordinary world when nothing is happening and everything is goody goody. Then there will be call of adventure. Ram will go and kill all those Rakshas. Refusal of the call, meeting the mentor. He will meet the mentor, crossing the threshold. Dashrath will tested by allies and enemy. Dashrath will test him, what approach he will take, what ordeal he will face, what is the reward, and you will be able to classify Ramayana from this template. But it is a very typical template to discuss in this short workshop. We will keep ourselves to three-act and pyramid. There is a 8-point arc also: status, trigger, quest, surprise, choice, climax, reversal, and resolution. So that is 8-point arc. Then there is a pyramid structure. Let me do one thing for you. I will try to divide popular film Titanic through a pyramid structure. Exposition. In exposition, we see that what is the our state of our characters is. Everything is good, and we come to know about our characters. Good things are happening here, and we are learning about our characters. So in exposition phase of Titanic, we see that Jack has won the lottery, and the rich lady is coming on the ship, and all those things are happening in the exposition phase. Then rising action, they fall in love. That is the rising action part of the story. Then climax, Titanic has hit the iceberg and they are sinking. And finally, Jack dies. That is the climax. Then there is falling action that a heroine has been saved, and but she has to take the challenge of living without Jack. That is the falling action. And then resolution that finally she fulfills her promise. She lives her full age, and when she dies, she reunites with Jack on the Titanic deck in her dreams or afterlife. So that's the resolution. So that's a pyramid kind of structure. But as I said earlier, also that these all are theory things, and I'm explaining you for the sake of learning. But if you're not able to remember anything, just remember the simple three-act structure which was given by Aristotle. That is setup, confrontation, and resolution. You have to set up the story where you are explaining about your characters, what are the what are your characters doing, in which world, what is the context of a story, which world it is set. That is all set up. Then there will be confrontation, that some challenge will be there, your hero will be challenged, he will face some problems, He will overcome those problems. That is the confrontation phase. And resolution. What has changed? What is changed in the context, or what is changed in the protagonist, or what is changed in the tertiary characters? That will be the resolution or climax part. So if you're not able to remember all this complex structure, just remember the three act structure: setup, confrontation, resolution, and write your story. Then try to do this exercise uh, to analyze different through these techniques. Let's come to the topic of the day: visual storytelling. To understand visual storytelling, we have to understand first that what is not visual storytelling. So written text without illustration, like our novels and other things which are without any kind of illustration, and oral storytelling like theater or stand-up comedy, that will come under non-visual storytelling. So remains. So what remains is performing art, illustrated text, movies, and interactive storytelling modes. They together form visual storytelling. And since concerned with digital storytelling, we will understand that in detail. One thing I would like to clear here is that visual storytelling is important because visual sense is important. If you see the bottom left corner, about 80% of our learning and knowledge and perception, everything happens through sense. That is the importance of visual sense in a normal human being. When I talk about normal human being, it's because if somebody is blind, then his or her other senses will be more strong. But in a normal human being, about 80% of things happen, 80% of learning, cognition, and perception happens through visual sense. That's why visual storytelling is very important. Coming to storytelling. Digital storytelling is storytelling through digital mediums using multimedia. What is multimedia? Media is this photography, text, audio, video, interactive elements, illustration. This is media. And we talk about every one of them together, then it is multimedia. And again, we have discussed about power of storytelling earlier when we talk about Chandrakanta. And to understand the power of digital storytelling, we must understand that any picture, meme, or reel or video made by a normal person using a normal equipment like his mobile phone is a potential digital story. So that means digital storytelling has empowered everyone in a true sense. What are the primary mediums of digital storytelling? The primary mediums are illustrative ebooks, which are classified in comics, graphic novels, web comics, motion comics. Then there are movies, which like films, videos, animation, live content, short content. Then there are interactive mediums like website, video games, extended really content, and transmedia content. We will talk about transmedia content later. I will explain it. And that is how digital storytelling takes place. And what is the process? The process of any kind of storytelling, whether it is digital or you have to identify your story, you have to plan for it, you have to generate your story, you have to post process or edit it, publish it, spread it, and then interact with your readers or audience. So that is the process of digital storytelling, as you can see in the bottom. Coming to illustrative text, we are coming to our topic of now visual storytelling through comics. We are gradually coming to it. And this medium of illustrative text differ from any other medium in a unique way. What is that? This can be done physically or digitally. So we can have books in our hand also, or we can read on our tablets or Kindles. This illustrative text is further classified into following categories, which is textbook with illustration, which are our subject books; storybook with illustration. We have seen children book which have bigger illustration and some smaller text. Those are storybooks. Then we have novels with illustrations, and there finally the final two categories are categories of our interest: comics and graphic novels. As this session is more concerned with the last two, let us understand the difference between comics and graphic novels before we come to comics as a medium of storytelling. And one important thing which I want to tell you about comics and storytelling, as you might have read now by now, is on the bottom side, is if an ecosystem of any country is developed, then the IP of comics and graphic novel is something which can be endlessly harvested. You see the case of Marvel Cinematic Universe that all started by comics. Now n number of films and series are coming in Marvel universe. Same goes with manga and anime. The, initially, there were these manga novels who were loved and adored by different readers, and then there are n number of anime shows based on those manga novels. So this is a very strong medium. Once it gets matured, it gives you huge rewards. Comics and graphic novels. This whenever I take different sessions or whenever I speak with different people, this is one of the confusing point for them, that what is the difference between comics and graphic novels. And since we are talking about story today, for a newbie or for someone who is just starting, you can essentially take comics and graphic novel as same. There is no much difference. But if we go deeper, then let me explain that what how it differs. Traditionally, comics are associated with cartoon style, while graphic novels are while graphic novels try more experimental and different art styles. Graphic novels normally they have more complex, longer, or psychological based storylines, which are more suited for teenagers, young adults, and adults. More people, more number of people like them compared to children. So these are having more complex, longer, and developed storyline. They convey the story more maturely to. That's why I appeal to teenagers, young adults, and adults. Then they have better character development, backstory. They have open endings and as well as psychological and philosophical angles. And finally, graphic novels are usually published and marketed similar to the as novels are done. So that is the whole difference between graphic novel and comics. And Will Eisner, who was a famous American illustrator, his for graphic novel A Contract with God in 1978. This was the first graphic novel which made the word graphic novel popular, and that is the reason that Will Eisner is known as the father of graphic novels. Finally, we have come to the title of today's session. What is visual storytelling through comics? And to go to that, we have to first understand what is comics. Is comics a plural word or a singular word? Is it related to comedy, as now word comic is coming in? Or is it always about superhero? Who made the first comic? And so many questions must be there when someone talks about comics. Talking about the oldest comics, this is a disputed area. But first comics must be at least 200 years old, roughly. However, there is a different theories about which is the first comics in the world. The first thing first, whether we classify comics is a as a plural or a singular. Comics in singular forms refer to the art form that combines word and images. मतलब, as a singular form, it is something which combines images and words. That is, it is a sequence, a visual sequence aided by lettering. And in a plural form, it refers to physical or digital artwork created in this format. In plural form, it is also the name of the newspaper section where all comic strips are placed. But if we talk about grammar is essentially very confusing in most of the aspect. So different sources varies differently on how to address comics regarding grammar. In the dictionary, if we talk about dictionary, it lists comics as a singular, plural, countable noun, and adjective, all. So it is all about uses. You can interchangeably use it as a singular or plural based on your use. What is the etymology? Etymology is how the name is derived. So the comic first referred to the comic strips which was published in newspapers. Initially, they were also called funnies because the content was comedy. So from comedy, the term comic came, and then later when these strips became popular, what publisher used to do that they combined these strips in the form of a book and they used to sell these books. So From the funny, it comes to comic. Then comic, it became comic books, and then the comic book was shortened to a form comics. So that is the story of how comics word was derived. Comic strip, it is called funny. Funny means comic. The strips are published in a book, so it is called comic book, and short form of comic book, comics. So that's how the name was derived. And over the years, it is developed from funny to books for more mature readers and superheroes, fantasy, drama, horror, third worlds, literature, dystopian worlds, and horror and whatnot. And even the art styles were evolved, which we'll talk later. And they developed into different art form altogether. Initially, it was limited to newspapers, but later on, standalone comics and series were published. And over time, this change led to the recognition of comics as a visual art form, separate visual art form. When we talk about the question of this, what was the first? Again, if we talk about the first superhero, then Phantom by Lee Falk, which was first published in 1936, or February 1936 in a newspaper, is considered to be the first superhero. Later, Phantom was also published as Vital in Indrajal Comics in India, which was done by Times of India in 1980s. So that's the first superhero, credited superhero. When we talk about comics, there is another term which you should know, that is sequential art. We talk about Will Eisner, who is regarded as the father of graphic novel, and he coined another term, sequential art. Art is a sequence of static images which conveys a definite idea. And there are other forms of art apart from comics which fit this definition. So some people interchangeably use the term sequential art for comics, but sequential art can be something other than comics. So even before there were printing presses and comics, there were rock paintings in, like I've given few examples like Cave of Altamira, in by Pex Tapestry, even on the clothes and Stations of the Cross, and all these are thousands of years old, and these are sequential art. So when if any one of you want to start a career in comics, you have to learn the sequential art, drawing same thing again and again. This is the history of comics, and we are talking about the Western world, because comics were more prominently known even in India. Western comics are more prominently known, and so this is the timeline of Western comics. In 1920s, we started. In 1930s, many superhero bonds. We discussed about Phantom in 1936. Then in 1940s, World War increased the demand of comic books. New war-based books have came in this time. 1950s, from newsstands did go to direct distribution in shops. 1960s is termed as silver age of comics, and there were these conventions of comic cons and other conventions started. In 1970s, there was a drop of because of post-war and censorship emerges. And then in 1980s, new publishers and independent publishers came into existence. In 1990, uh, many imprints of different publishers were separated, and in 2000 to present, comics have taken a whole new shape. We discussed about MCU, then there is DC Universe, and then there are anime shows and all those adaptations. If we talk about Indian counterparts in this time, we'll discuss shortly discuss about that also. So Indian comics industry also activated around similar time, but had a different timeline, and we will discuss that shortly. What is also important when we talk about evolution of comics is the evolution of art style. The cave murals and ancient narrative art was one style. Then there was a line art style using offset printers, pulp fiction. Then we briefly discussed about bronze, silver, and golden age of comics. Different art styles were developed in this ages. Pop arts and cyberpunk. These type of styles were developed in different art movements. Then experimental styles. Then manga comics rise mainly from Japan, Korea, China. The rise of manga art. outside USA. Then web comics and digital art, which was limited to not limited to any specific country, but it was evolved throughout the world. Web comics and digital art. Then the ageless age of comics. This ageless age of comics, it is an interesting one. Ageless age is a misnomer, uh, but it is a term nevertheless. It's a term for modern comics age after 1990s. So after 1990, there are no more golden, silver, diamond age because comics have expanded into something which don't have any particular shape or border. So this age of comics is called ageless age. And then there are AI generated comics which have recently came into existence. For example, I have this on the right side of the screen. You can see this is a short AI generated comics which I gave few prompts and it was generated in 5 to 6 seconds. So this is some kind of evolution which is happening in comic industry. What are the comic elements? Now coming to the elements of comics, we have discussed about the elements of storytelling. But our session, as it is a session on visual storytelling through comics. So we talk about different elements of comics. There are three main elements: story, art, and design. When we talk about this story, there's script, dialogues, captions, and onomatopoeia. We will discuss each one of these in detail in coming slides. Then in art, there is penciling, inking, coloring, computer effects. And in design, there is paneling, lettering, sound effect, and light effects. But again, I always like to simplify things. If you're not understanding anything, remember, story is important. Though comics are a visual medium, often the writer of the comic is credited higher than the illustrator because in the end, it's all about storytelling. And that's why I've given much of the focus, even though the session is called visual storytelling, I've given more time to storytelling than the visual part, which we are covering now, because storytelling is more important. Coming to the panels. So, comics, you all must have read different comics. Comics are the single page of comics is subdivided into panels. In these panels, we see a one shot, one frame of the sequence in one panel, and it is accompanied by text or captions or uh, sounds. It could be of different size, shape, which has a different meaning. I will come to example of the next slide. So these are different panels. A page can be divided into four, two, one single panel, anything. Then these are gutters. So the gutter is simply the margin between different panels. So if you see there is a thin lines, the line of separation between these panels, these are called gutters. And you give more space, one panel will look more separated from other panel. It will have a different meaning. If you combine two panels, it will have a different meaning. We will see an example now. Panels and gutters. Now you see the first two panels, they are connected because our enemy is facing our protagonist and it is a just face-to-face combat. So we have connected two panels. And then again a story starts happening and we have given a gutter margin to separate those panels. One, two, if you see three and four panel, they are separated by a gutter. So we have given a gutter margin. That's how these are different nitty-gritties of comics, which you have to understand. Now here you can see that all the panels are rectangular with different gutter, but we have adopted all the different rectangular panels here. There will be different kind of panels. There is a text box and captions which will come later, but here you can see simple rectangular panels with different gutter margins. Then there are frames. And frames, panels are separation, but frames are the one which are actually drawn. Like it can be a rectangle, it can be square, it can be a pentagon, hexagon, any shape, star shape. Normally, rectangular panels are adopted, but not necessary. Let's see an example. Frames. Normally, rectangular frames are adopted for panels, but not necessary. Let's see an example. So if you see the top, we have adopted 8 octagonal uh, frame for the middle panel, and then there are quadrilateral panels for surrounding panels. And so quadrilateral frames. And then again back to rectangular frames for the bottom two panels, separated by a normal gutter on all sides. So frames can be of any shape, and it depends on the story you are telling. Then there are splash panels. Splash panels are panels which are spread across the whole width of the page. And even sometimes, even after spreading across the width, they spread across the page and there are no borders. So we'll see what is splash and what is bleed. Splash is a horizontal panel on full width, and bleed is a when this panel is further spreaded through the margins. So if you see the bottom panel, it is full bleed. It is there is no border, and again it is a spread across the horizontal, so it is a splash panel. Then as like filmmaking, I am a filmmaker, so this is my one of my favorite topic, but we'll not go into detail. But any shot in a panel can be a close-up shot, mid shot, long shot, and there can be n number of counter shots, uh, extreme close-ups, extreme long shot, wide shot. So there can be many shots, but for initial understanding, it could you can understand that it could be a close-up shot, mid shot, long shot, or anything. So this is an example. The first shot is a wide shot. The second shot is a close shot on the character sitting on the right. And the last shot is an extreme close-up on the character of the character sitting on the left. So that's how we tell a story. Depending on the emotions, we choose the first shot, two people are generally discussing. In the second shot, the discussion is the discussion is getting serious. So we have shown the close-up shot. And the discussion is getting further serious as the protagonist of this story in the last frame is promising something to himself. So it is getting further serious, and we have used the extreme close-up. Then there are narration box and speech bubbles. So this last we have seen this speech bubbles in the last page. These elliptical bubbles are the speech bubbles, and then there are narration box, which are very important. Sometimes when we cannot have dialogues, either we have to tell the story visually, or a character is speaking to himself or herself, or telling the story to us. Let us see an example. So this is a story is starting, and we have to establish the context. We have to establish the character, and how we are doing it? We are doing it using captions. These are called captions. And the character is telling about himself through captions because he cannot talk to himself. He cannot use speech bubbles here. So we are using captions. The speech bubbles, it could be scream bubbles when somebody is shouting, thought bubbles if somebody is thinking, or colored bubbles. Like we have used colored captions here. So it could be colored bubbles. So each one of these have different meaning. And when you go into telling story through comics, you will understand that how each one of these are used. I will come to the example of speech bubbles. And one more thing, emanata. Emanata refers to something. I will show you with an example. Okay. So you see the third panel, fourth panel, where these two gentlemen, they are having an exclamation mark near their heads. They say that is emanata. We are showing that they are surprised. Through their visual expression, we can see that they are surprised. But by showing that exclamation mark, we are accelerating our point that they are surprised. So that is emanata. It refers to the teardrops, sweat drops, question marks, or even speed lines, which we show along with the characters to show their to exaggerate their emotions or movement. This emanata. And these are speech bubbles. You see, plenty of gutter margin is given here. Onomatopoeia. So onomatopoeia is a term which is used for the words which have a sound, similar sound, which is found when we spell those words. So like splash is a sound, just sound like splash. Jap, jap sounds like jap. So these are the words which are used in comics to give sound effects. Let's see an example. Understand by example. So this is comics in English and Hindi. If you see on the left side English page, whoosh, zoop, zap, zoop. All these words sound like what we are how we are spelling them. Smash, whack. Similarly in Hindi, shak. Badak, dadak, badak, ah. So all these words sound like how I am spelling those. So this is onomatopoeia. This is very important in comics to how to use this onomatopoeic words to convey our sounds. I will quickly go to it. This is transition when we transit from one panel to another. Either there has to be an action, there has to be movement in time, or we are switching the subject or focus, or scene is changing, or any other thing is happening. That's why we are able to shift from one panel to another. Either we have to move in time, we have to move in action, we have to move in focus, we have to move among subject, we have to move among scene, or any other movement. Then we can show the transition between one panel and another. Lighting and color are very important for the comics. Based on different kind of lightings and color, we can display different ideas. Like different colors for red light can communicate idea of violence. So we have seen in many Hollywood films that whenever there is a danger in large climax and there is a this facility of villain, then suddenly red light starts flashing. What that conveys? Danger. Then what is the setting? We have discussed this earlier also. What is the context of the story? So in comics, this is very important that what is your context? Suppose you are making a comics and you are developing your own world, then you have to first explain to readers that what are the principles of this world, how this for example, there may be no gravity in your world. Then you have to explain to the readers that Newton's law of motion doesn't work in this world. So that is the setting. Then there is body language, facial expression, gesture, posture, and gaze of the this what you're doing is very important. We go back to this slide. Now, this you see that this lady and her friend, they are getting smashed by this big man, and in the final panel, you see there is a kind of a determination in the protagonist eyes that she is ready to fight. So that you can see in her eyes that she is ready to fight. So that is expression, gesture, posture is very important in a comic. And finally, uh, there are objects. By giving different objects to our characters, we can change the setting or theme, and we can uh, give the different context to our characters. So we have spoke about a lot of things. We have spoke about panel, frames, onomatopoeia, lettering, and all those things. But what you finally need is a creative approach. You have to have an idea. You have to develop that idea into a story. You have to make that a story, and you have to sell that story. And as a content creator, you just need your story, personality, equipment, time, and channel. I will explain that in detail. As a content creator, you need a story, which we all have learned how to make a story in last few slides. And you have to have your personality as a content creator. That what kind of storyteller you are. Your equipment could be anything. It could be your camera, it could be your pen, it could be your laptop, it could be anything. But use it as your medium. You have to have time. You have to invest time for making this story. And then you have to have a channel. Channel means distribution method. If it is a book, how you will distribute it, how you will send it to your readers. If it is a video, how you will do it. You will send it to YouTube or you will do something else. So that's a channel. So these five things are very essential for a content creator and keeping creative approach. So we spoke about the Western industry initially. Let's talk about comics in India. Again, approx 100 years old. 1960s to 70s can be termed as a silver era of Indian comics. 80s to 90s was a golden era. And on it, from year 2000 onwards, comic industry is on a decline in India. Why? Because it is a very fragmented industry. There are comic publishers which are located in different parts of our country, and we can count them on a hand. There are less than, say, maybe 50 or 60 publishers in India. Then there are IP issues because there are different how to explain this, that we are not able to, as an industry, we are not able to develop our IP to an extent that we can widely sell it, we can widely distribute it. Either there are legal issues among the IP, content creators, or there are other kind of personal issues, family issues, which restricted the which restricted the uh, uh, spreading of this Indian IPs. Also, they were not able to cope up with digital era, and unfortunately, print comics have to stop, and the transformation to digital era of Indian comics was not that smooth, and now they are in need of recognition. I myself have a publishing house, and as a president of IC, we have more than 25 members. All of our members and members or my colleagues, they have different publishing house, and all of them need recognition. And once they are recognized, then there are possibilities of integration with other mediums, possibilities of making these into films, possibility of making them into games and other mediums. So when I say that comics is in a declining phase in India, it is not something which you should be uh, worried as when you're deciding to make your career. Because if you're developing a skill set for a comics artist in India, can be used in other mediums also. I will explain it how. What are the career choices in comics industry? You can be a story writer, script writer. Why both are different? Because yes, story is just a concept, a plot, detailed plot, but a script writer details it how to make into a comics. Then storyboard artist who divide a story into different panel scenes. Then there is penciler who actually draws the comics. Then inker, sometimes penciler and inker are the same. Then colorist who color the comics. Then there is a letterers who do the speech bubbles and speech bubbles and captions. Then there is graphic designers who do this onomatopoeia and inventa, all those things. And there are editors who oversee that everything is fitting into one place. So these are different type of career streams one can adopt in comics. Where to start? If as a person you believe that you can tell your stories very well, then you should make your career in writing field. If you believe you can create visuals well, then you should make your career in illustration field. And if you believe you can manipulate data well, means you can use computer and manipulate the data well, then you can should make your career in the computer field. If you see the first two, story writer and script writer, are the writing field. Storyboard artist, penciler, inker, and colorist. All four are illustration field. And letterer, graphic designer, and editor. Editor could be a writer or computer designer or anything, but letterer and graphic designer are basically the computer oriented fields. Often this path crosses each other, and as we mentioned earlier also, then you are not restricted to single medium. If you are a storyboard artist, you can very well make storyboard for films also. But you have to remember one thing, that presently, in present scenario, most of the comic book artists in different fields work as a freelancer in India. So that is something you should be ready to do if you are planning to make a career in this field. What are the future trends? This is from Riva, one of our comics. What are the future trends? Future trends are I showed you the AI comics. I don't know how the future of AI in comics look like. As of now, it is very difficult to speak. But then there is integration of AI, virtual reality, innovative editing tools. So all different type of content can be created. And we briefly touched upon transmedia storytelling earlier. This is very important. And this is something which I should urge you to focus, that storytelling across different mediums to convey a unified story through multiple platforms, utilizing the unique strengths of each medium, is called transmedia. I will explain it. जब हम किसी स्टोरी को अलग अलग मीडियम से, जैसे कि किताबों से, फिल्मों से, वीडियोस से, म्यूजिक से, अलग अलग मीडियम से अलग अलग प्लेटफॉर्म पे देखते हैं और एक ही स्टोरी को बोलते हैं, तो वो ट्रांसमीडिया कहलाता है. If we see MCU, it is on OTT, it is in theaters. There are comics of MCU, Marvel comics, and there are figures, toys, there are video games, and all those stories are loosely connected with each other. So that's a transmedia storytelling. It's very, very powerful. Harry Potter. We have our Indian example as well, Bahubali. Bahubali was done as a live action film. It was also done as an animation film. It was done as an animation serial on TV. It was done as a comics. It was done as a video game. So that's a transmedia storytelling. This is very powerful, and that is the future, I would say. Finally, again, one thing I want to learn, take away from this slide, I would say is all art forms, so as comics, are only about one thing: self-expression. Who you are as an artist, you have to self-express yourself. This is the last slide, and the modern times we all have the accessibility with our digital gadgets and social media, and everyone has become a visual storyteller. Everyone can make a reel, everyone can take a photo, can make a meme, can post something. Everyone has become a visual storyteller in modern times, and that is a great time to be in. A great competition but great opportunities too, and that is where we as a visual storyteller can make a difference. If we upgrade ourselves, if we learn what are how to make a story, what are the different, as we have discussed, different type of plot, different type of characters, different type of archetypes. Once we know how we can make ourselves a good storyteller, then we can do all these things with ease. And that is how I would like to end, that everyone has a story and every story has an audience, and we just need to express ourselves and express our story. And that's it for today. And it was wonderful to take this session. And yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Pankaj.